Namo Namaha friends, I am RRK. Welcome back to my channel where I talk about all things bookish. Today, in honor of Pitrupaksha, I am doing a recommendation video specifically of books that feature grandparent-grandchildren relationship and books that symbolize the continuation of legacy. Today has not been my day. I do not know the number of times I have tried recording this video. It is incredibly hot here and I definitely cannot record anymore without the fan. So I'm sorry if you can hear some disturbance throughout the video. Please forgive me. I really cannot record today without the fan. The heat is just too much here today. So let's get to the video, shall we? But before I move into the video, you must know what Pitrupaksha is, right? So Pitrupaksha is a fortnight-long occasion from the Hindu calendar. Pitrupaksha is derived from the Sanskrit words Pitru, which means ancestor, and Paksha, which means fortnight. Now, as in most of the Sanskrit words, this particular word has more nuance to it, but I'm just telling you the most obvious meaning of it. This is a time that encourages the current generation to revere and remember the elders who have passed on or their ancestors, mainly because elders and ancestors are those without whom we wouldn't be who we are and where we are. So this is an occasion to honor their contribution to our lives. It's a very pious and somber occasion, and this year it occurs from September 20th to October 6th. So we also believe that they watch over us and that they protect and guide us in times of dire need. It's an occasion to help us remember the things that shouldn't ever be forgotten, a time that reinforces the importance of the continuation of our heritage and legacy. Now, with that preamble out of the way, let's move on to the recommendations. So I have broken up this recommendations video into two categories. First one is obviously books that feature grandparent-grandchildren relationship, and the second one is where the prominent feature of the book is the continuation of legacy or heritage. Maybe you're proud of that heritage, or maybe you're fighting for that heritage, whatever it is. So those are the two categories that I will be covering in this particular video, and I will be listing the books based on an increasing order of my rating and liking. So let's get down to the recommendations. First category, grandparent-grandchildren recommendation. The first book is Someone You Love by Christine Granata. Incidentally, this is the latest book that I covered. I read it only a few weeks back or maybe a few days back, and this is a romance story with disability representation, and we have our protagonist Charlie, who plans to take a holiday in memory of her late mother. And there she meets Bryce Holden, who had been in a very bad accident that left him disabled. He was in a wheelchair at one point in time, but right now he walks. He is the grandson of the homestay owner. Now, while the romance between them and the disability representation is the focus of the story, I found that the relationship of Bryce and his granny to be the highlight of the story. Now, Bryce's granny has been the rock of his life since his parents' death, and she has taken care of him throughout all the heartbreak that he has suffered over the years. She also has a very heartwarming relationship with Charlie. So this granny is a vital character in the story, and I recommend this book if you want a sweet, if not a sappy romance story. The next recommendation is a book that I have mentioned quite a number of times in my channel, but please forgive me for mentioning it again because it does suit the theme of this video. Before that, what are the odds that books that have Charlie as protagonist have excellent grandparent-grandchildren representation? Slim, right? But here is another book that has a protagonist named Charlie, and it really has a very good representation of grandparent and grandchildren dynamic. So that is Survive the Night by Riley Sager. Now, I have already spoken about Survive the Night ad nauseum in multiple videos. So I will either give the relevant videos in the card above or in the description box below. So I will not waste your time elaborating on the plot anymore. But what I have not mentioned in the previous video is the grandparent who features prominently in the story. Both Charlie and her friend are very close with their grandmothers. In fact, Charlie is actually returning back to her grandmom's place to recuperate from her heartache, and her friend's grandmother was a permanent and loving stay in her life. The love and affection in their relationship is shown to be very palpable. This here is one more reason why you should definitely pick Survive the Night by Riley Sager. Now, third book in the list is The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. Now, usually middle grade books are a gold mine for all kinds of healthy representations, from nurturing parents to caring siblings to great foster families or found families. You can almost find that perfect story to warm the cockles of your heart. So no surprise that I have a middle grade book in this list. The Girl Who Drank the Moon is a 2016 release, and I read it back in 2019. So my memories of the book are hazy at best, but I know that it had an excellent grandmother-grandchild synergy. Now, this is a mystical, almost fairy tale-esque story where the town people routinely leave a baby as an offering to the witch in the woods, hoping she wouldn't terrorize them. But this reclusive witch named Zan is actually a very kind witch, and she's absolutely clueless about why the townspeople are abandoning their babies. She takes the babies, feeds them starlight, and gives them to foster parents in other villages who actually need those babies. So one day she accidentally feeds a baby moonlight, which is supposed to give lots of magical power to the baby, but the magic is also quite volatile. So if you don't have the ability to control that magic, it could be quite dangerous. So Zan decides that this baby needs more guidance. So she decides to raise this kid herself. Now, she is living in a forest, and there are a few magical creatures in the forest, and they all come together and raise this baby, and it is a very adorable book. Their relationship, not only the baby's relationship with the grandmom, Zan, but also with the other creatures in the forest, is very endearing to read about. The found family trope is very strong in the story, and Luna's, that is the baby's name, Luna's and Zan's relationship is quite endearing. Their relationship is what good middle grade books are made up of. Worth the read if you really want to be cuddled up by the loving energy this book gives off. I am back to the romance genre, and this time it's the Brown Sisters trilogy by Talia Hibbert. This trilogy is extremely popular in the contemporary and romance circles for excellent representation of various kinds. Like, you have autistic person representation, you have chronic pain representation, you have a variety of representations in these books. But the one enduring thing in all the three books, that is Get a Life Chloe Brown, Take a Hint Danny Brown, and At Your Age Eve Brown, is their relationship with their Nana or grandmother. I have read only the first and the third book in the series, so I cannot really attest to the representation in Take a Hint Danny Brown, but I know that both in the first and last books, Nana is a strong presence in the girl's life. She is portrayed as a liberal, strong feminist character who doesn't mince words but is very kind and nurturing. She is depicted as the essential glue that keeps all of them together, and I adore their relationship, the banter and the obvious love between them. Now, my top book in this category is And the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Backman. Any list will be incomplete without the mention of a Frederick Backman book. Now, he writes family dynamics like no other. Be it parent-child, wife-husband, or grandparent-grandchild, I'm sure you can find one book from his work that fits your taste. Now, the book I elect for this list is And the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer. I know he has two other books, if I'm not wrong. I think one is My Grandmother. He has such long titles that it's very difficult for me to remember the exact title, and I think most of his books are translated versions from the original language. I don't remember what is the original language in which he publishes his books, but from that they translate it to English, and I think inevitably it becomes a long title. I think the grandmother's book is, I'll put up the picture here. My grandmother asked me to tell you she is sorry. I think that's the book title. And also A Man Called Ove. I have that book with me, but I have not yet gotten around to reading it. These two books also seem to have some sort of a grandparent representation, but since I have not read them, I obviously cannot comment on the representation part of it. Now, And the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer is a different book from all the books I have mentioned till now in this video. That is, it's too poignant for a light read. You might need to prepare yourself to be wrecked. This is not a book with a token representation. It is a book where the grandparent and grandchild relationship is the cornerstone of the story. I have a detailed review video of this book which I will link in the description box below and give it up in the cards here. So do check that out if you are interested. This is a story of a grandfather who is actually struggling with Alzheimer's and his grandson. The grandson is too young to understand his grandfather's struggle with his loss of memories. He cannot grasp the adult problems, but he, in typical child fashion, provides his grandfather the very thing that other adults who are burdened with their own problems cannot give him, which is acceptance. He accepts his grandfather as he is, obviously because he's not responsible for his grandfather, so I can understand. All I'm saying is he sees his grandfather with that child's perspective. The story is also told from a child's perspective. You need to read this book to understand their relationship. He cherishes the time he spends with his grandfather because he knows that something is wrong, something is not okay, that his grandfather is struggling, that his grandfather is suffering from something, but he doesn't know what exactly it is. So what he does is he cherishes his time with his grandfather, just as the grandfather also loves to pass on his most valuable memories to his grandson for safekeeping, which was amazing because he knows he's losing his memories, and memories are extremely important, as we will see in the next category where I'll be talking about legacy and heritage. So obviously memories are incredibly important, and the grandfather does what generally grandparents do, pass on their memories for safekeeping. So that's what this grandfather also does. Just thinking of their relationship gets me choked up. It's a tiny novella with less than 100 pages, but it's a book that everybody with a grandchild or grandparent must read at least once. Okay, that last one was a little heavy. Now that I'm done with the grandparent-grandchild part of this video, let us go to some honorable mentions that highlight the need for a legacy and the value of heritage. So the first thing that I would like to mention in this category is a series. It is called the Lifeship Traders Trilogy by Robin Hobb. If you want to understand the importance of generations and the responsibility each generation has to its ancestors as well as its descendants, then you simply have to pick up the Lifeship Traders series by Robin Hobb. I have already spoken about this book in one of my wrap-up videos. I will obviously link that wrap-up video in the description box down below. This is an adult fantasy series where a group of people stay in a volatile land with almost predatory elements. What keeps these people together and protected are the traditions they stick to from generations. Now, this is a multi-dimensional story with various facets. This is a typical Robin Hood story. Only she can write something so vast and so comprehensive that you need to read these books to understand the expertise of Robin Hood in crafting stories. Now, we have a community that builds ships from a wood called wizard wood. These ships acquires a life of its own when 3 generations of its captain from its owner's family die aboard the ship. So obviously here you have the generational element. Then there is a plot with snakes, dragons, which also highlights generational memories and traumas. There is also a pirate subplot that highlights the need for a family and intergenerational connect. So it's a complex but very satisfying series that time and again raises the points of legacy and heritage. Now, another story that did the importance of family and in extension a tribe really well was Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Woolley, which I finished just last month. This is a story of a biracial girl who yearns to be a part of her Native American heritage. She has an aunt, a loving granny from her Native American side of the family, and she synchronizes with their culture as well as fish takes to water. Now, this book highlights the need to remember and take pride in our heritage. Also, the need to take forward our legacy, especially in a largely hostile and predatory environment. I have covered this book in some detail in my August wrap-up video, the link of which again I will provide in the description box below or maybe in the cards. Last but not the least, one of the most impactful books on this list, and that is Night by Elie Wiesel. So this is the only physical book I have, and I absolutely love this book. This is not a light-hearted book. This is a book about Holocaust. So Night is an autobiography of sorts where Elie Wiesel describes his incarceration in survival of and subsequent release from the Nazi concentration camps during the Jews' Holocaust of World War II. Now, I'm not sure if I am capable enough to sufficiently explain the kind of treasure this book really is. Elie Wiesel is a survivor, and he does his part in carrying forward his legacy, foremost by telling his story. Now, I would like to talk about some of the quotes in this book. Some things reminded me of Kashmiri Hindus' plight. Many things reminded me of all the sufferings that India and Hindus in general have faced under the invaders' hands. After the Holocaust, Jews might not have gotten reparations, but at least they have taken these memories forward, and they are very, very particular about remembering the trials and tribulations their ancestors had gone through and to never miss the red flags. But Hindus never got their resolution. Their plight is never even acknowledged. So in this also, at one point in time, Elie Wiesel mentions how it was considered wrong to talk about Holocaust. But then it became illegal to deny Holocaust. So they have come a long way, but Hindus are yet to get to that level. So I would like to read a few quotes from this book. In retrospect, I must confess that I do not know or no longer know that what I wanted to achieve with my words. I only know that without this testimony, my life as a writer or my life, period, would not have become what it is. That of a witness who believes he has a moral obligation to try to prevent the enemy from enjoying one last victory by allowing his crimes to be erased from human memory. Another one, it is obvious that the war which Hitler and his accomplices waged was a war not only against Jewish men, women and children, but also against Jewish religion, Jewish culture, Jewish tradition. Therefore, Jewish memory. I'm speechless. You just have to replace Jew with Hindu and you will get similar horrible stories. Earlier, I described the difficulties encountered by Night before its publication in French 47 years ago. Despite overwhelmingly favorable reviews, the book sold poorly. The subject was considered morbid and interested no one. If a rabbi happened to mention the book in his sermon, there were always people ready to complain that it was senseless to burden our children with the tragedies of the Jewish past. This is what I was talking about when I said that as far as acknowledgement and acceptance of the atrocities committed on the Hindu culture and us as a Hindu society, we have a long way to go. The topic of Auschwitz has become part of mainstream culture, which, by the way, atrocities committed on Hindus have not yet become mainstream culture even in the birthland of that religion, which is India. So the topic of Auschwitz has become part of mainstream culture. There are films, plays, novels, international conferences, exhibitions, annual ceremonies with the participation of the nation's officialdom. The most striking example is that of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. It has received more than 22 million visitors since its inauguration in 1993. And the best statement for me in this book, which is in the preface of this book, okay? For the survivor who chooses to testify, it is clear his duty is to bear witness for the dead and for the living. He has no right to deprive future generations of a past that belongs to our collective memory. To forget would be not only dangerous but offensive. To forget the dead would be akin to killing them a second time. The importance of telling stories to carry forward a legacy is underrated, and I cannot recommend this book highly enough, especially to people who think closing their eyes will spare them from facing inconvenient truths. I hope this Pitrupaksha, Pitrus give Hindus the strength to acknowledge and accept the atrocities done on them by invaders and their followers, to reclaim, take pride and take forward their millennia worth of legacy. So those were my Pitrupaksha themed recommendations. Some are funny, some stoic, and some are heartbreaking, but almost all have their hearts in the right place. Hope you will give some of these books a try if you haven't already done so. I would love to hear your thoughts on them. My socials are given in the description box below, so feel free to let me know your comments or questions via them. Meet you guys in my next video. Until then, stay safe, happy and healthy. Om Shanti.